Did you know that currently 60% of LGBTQ employees cover or keep their identity a secret? And not so much with Gen Z, 25% of whom identify as transgender or as or as non-binary. So if you just think about that number of people who don't really feel like they can actually walk in their true authentic selves, it's interesting to think about. And you as a middle manager, I think this is an area where we need to have a conversation. And that's where I've invited Ricky Arundel to the muster. So hello, Ricky.
Good to be here, Sally. Good to be here.
Yeah, look, I just want to share a little bit about who you are so that everyone knows that you are an expert in this field. And then let's jump into this topic and really unpack it so that middle managers have a bit more confidence and a bit more courage to have some open conversations. After 25 years in middle and senior management, Ricky became an award-winning keynote speaker and founder of the United Kingdom's Professional Speaking Association. In 2002, 20 years earlier, in 2002, their speaking career almost ended when they changed gender. Faced with considerable discrimination, Ricky completed a master's degree in gender research and established themselves as a social entrepreneur, diversity speaker, and presentations skills coach, working with organisations keen to create a more inclusive workplace and delivering 2 successful TED Talks. So you've walked on the dot twice now.
I have.
That's awesome. That's brilliant. I just think that this is a great conversation that we need to have. So let's start with what are some of the challenges really facing LGBTQ employees?
I think the biggest one is the one that you've highlighted in that statistic, particularly Generation X and baby boomers like myself. Only about 3% of people, over 45 identify as LGBTQ. It's a very small percentage, and we've grown up in an environment where, for most of us, I still remember I was 17 when being gay ceased to be, was partially decriminalized. It wasn't fully. In fact, there were more arrests in 1967 after 1967 when they decriminalized it than there were before, because what they hadn't dealt with was that underlying negative attitude that people had, because from the time of Henry VIII right the way through for over 400 years, we've had a culture that we spread around the world. Unfortunately, that was Britain's biggest export. This really, really savage attitude towards anybody who's different, anybody whose sexuality or gender didn't quite fit. And it's hard. You can change the laws, but compared to changing attitudes, that's pretty easy. Changing attitudes has been the big problem. So that even though the law changed, and it's been steadily changing, even now, most Western countries now have a very open approach and a very positive towards LGBT people generally. We've still got all this negative stuff that's going on in America, with all the red states now banning pride marches, banning drag queens, sending doctors to prison just because they've helped a trans teenager. That sort of attitude has suddenly sort of come back up again. And it tells us that no matter what we think, everything is okay. It's not. It's still bubbling under the surface. And those of us who are LGBTQ know that. We know when we go somewhere that this isn't a safe place. This is not a place where I can let people know who I am. So I'll hide, I'll cover. And I think that's the biggest problem. I would say the research in the States showed 60%. It's about the same in the UK.
Wow.
I suspect similar issues in Australia.
What can a middle manager do about this to be more inclusive?
There's quite a lot that can be done. and I'm going to sort of refer to some thoughts here, because I've got 4 steps, which I think I try to recommend when I'm doing my presentations. I end up with 4 steps. The first one is clear equality policies fairly enforced. And the danger with policies is that we write up these complex, almost legal documents that nobody reads. It's there, it's the policy, it's pages and pages of it. It has to be something simple, clean. It just says, we are a company that accepts people, regardless of their gender, their sexual identity, their race. We accept people, and we will not tolerate discrimination, harassment, victimization. So that people get it very clearly that this is a company where, this is an organization where people are, difference is accepted. Diversity is part of who we are. So that's the first step, is to make sure we've got that clear policy in place. Difficult for a middle manager to enforce that if they're in a company where it's not coming top down. So I think what middle managers have to do, if they haven't got that in place, is to start to champion the cause, start to argue that we haven't got decent diversity policies, put some proposals forward that, in the middle management meetings and such, like, where you're talking about diversity. And I think most companies now are talking diversity. They're looking at how they can make this happen, because it doesn't just affect staff. This affects customers. It affects everybody dealing with the company. So that's the first step. The second step is to be seen to be inclusive, to do stuff that actually says, oh, wow, that's good. Now, I'm going to give an example here, which you may not have seen in Australia, but you can probably find it on YouTube. Last year, Virgin Atlantic produced a video, an advertising video. It's about a minute long, although they've got 60-second ones. And it was really filming Virgin staff. And you've got, male stewards with eyeliner and makeup, and you've got, all sung to the, I am what I am music. And you look at that and think, my God, well, when I fly next, I'm going to fly Virgin, because that feels like that's going to be a safe place. And that's what we've got to do, is create within our company this sense that this is a safe place for me to be myself, to come to work and not have to worry that I can't talk about what I did this weekend because it's going to sound a bit weird. I had this all the time. What do you do the weekend? Well, last weekend, this was before I changed gender. I went to a club dressed up in 6-inch heels and short skirt, and made up to the really, really sexy. And I can't tell people that's what I did. And if they spot some eyeliner, I'm in an amateur magic group. We had a dress rehearsal. So and I had all these excuses for why I could explain things that didn't quite fit. And I don't want to have to do that. And nobody wants to have to come to work and live like that. So being seen to be inclusive, and their middle managers can do that. If you've got gay, if you've got lesbian, if you've got trans or non-binary, that's just the thing we're seeing more and more of, especially with Gen Z. It's about accepting them. It's about having conversations. It's about sitting down, having lunch in the staff canteen with people who are quite clearly and openly LGBTQ, and being seen with them, being seen to be supporting them. That sends a message to everybody. Okay, this person is inclusive. And it may take a while. We just got get to know it. Number 3 is awareness and unconscious bias training. Most people don't know what it's like to be gay. They don't understand it. They think it's all about sex. It's not. And they've got all these misconceptions and stereotypes which have been fed to us over the years, and they've got to be erased with good training. And that, again, middle managers can do this with simple lunch and learn sessions, not just about LGBT, but just pick, trans, pick lesbian, pick Muslim, pick religious, some other religious, taking these different things and just having short sessions maybe bringing in an external speaker. Check out the voluntary groups around. There's probably somebody there who'd love to come along and talk to the organization and promote what they do to help educate about that subject. And the final one is challenge discrimination. Now, I think people feel quite tough about this. You don't have to do this. It doesn't have to be like, shaking, making a formal complaint about somebody and dobbing them in and feeling like you're grasping it. That isn't it. It's just a quiet word saying, hey, that joke was really inappropriate. And if they say, oh, there was no gay people there. Yeah, but you don't know they don't have gay children or gay parents, and that they will feel uncomfortable.
Or they've chosen not to identify as well openly.
Or they're in the closet and just not identify. So you don't know what people are. You don't know about their personal life, because if you're in an organization where it's not clear, it's not a very thing. So those 4 steps: clear quality policy, be seen to be inclusive, awareness and unconscious bias training, and finally just challenge discrimination, harassment, wherever you see it. Just a gentle word saying that's not okay.
Yeah, I think
eventually you have to.
I love the nuance that you give there, Ricky, where it's not about making a big deal of it. It's actually the quiet conversation on the side that says, hey, that's actually not an appropriate joke or a comment, because if we make that person wrong publicly and humiliate them, we're actually damaging that relationship, and the credit coins of trust in the bank get a little bit withdrawn then, don't they? So I think that nuance of making sure it's done in a mutually respectful way, again, reinforces that whole modeling of you as a middle manager, standing up for what's right, but doing it in that calm, quiet, polite way. I really like that nuance there. So thank you for that. And I really resonated with your point about no one reads policies. Yawn. And I guess then the challenge is, if your organization has, reams and reams and reams of a policy about diversity, great, they've got something, but don't just, maybe don't just sit there with that. Maybe actually have a chat with HR or people in culture or whoever's writing them to say, what's the one-pager version of this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or write the one-page version for your team.
Or with the team.
Yeah, with the team. Exactly.
Yeah. There you go, folks. Ricky and I are solving the problems of the world right now. Yeah, I always want to, I'm with you, how do we simplify? How do we make these things easier to do? And so that our leaders have got more confidence and courage and the competence, and the structure around them to support them to do these things. So I really appreciate that. And what a great 4-step model too. Thank you. But let's take this further. What are some of the ways that this can extend to making the team and the organization even more LGBTQ inclusive?
The big thing I think that everybody needs to do is to set up a ERG, employee resource group. You might call them something different, affinity group, whatever. And this is really just a voluntary thing within the organization, not just in one department, but just generally around the whole company. And that you've got, and it, when I was at university doing my degree, I also joined the LGBT Society. And the LGBT Society did its best to organize events that would promote, LGBT people, promote LGBT ideas. We hosted, stalls at the Freshers' Fair. We had, dances and, well, not dances, but, parties, and a whole variety of things were done to attract the mostly younger than me people, because I was 50 when I went there, and they were nearly all, well, I think I could have been their grandparent, but I got into it and enjoyed it. There were some mature students there as well. But I think this is the idea of having employee resource groups for various different factors. And I find a lot of my clients, it's the employee resource group that approaches me and says, can you come in and do a speech for the organization? Sometimes I end up feeling as if I'm preaching to the choir, because we've only got the group there. Recently, I did one in the States where they connected up with a women's group, they connected up with the family ERG. So they had a variety of people coming in, and some of the kind of questions, some of the questions that I was getting were the kind of questions that I'd expect from a concerned parent. You know, my child is, identifying as trans, and I'm not sure how we handle this sort of thing. And they're difficult challenges. So these are, discovering that your child is LGBTQ does throw everything off, because your dreams about how things are going to go, suddenly it's, oh, what, no grandchildren? What? Oh my God, they're going to go for, and there's all these now. Unfortunately, we've got some very anti-LGBT organizations around who seem to like demonizing anybody in the LGBT community, and they come up with some pretty horrible things. The whole idea is, we've got to stop these trans women going into women's toilets because your little daughter's not safe in there if they're using it. The assumption is all trans women are going into the ladies' toilet because they're perverts and paedophiles who are looking to. Sorry, perverts and paedophiles do not dress up as women in order to.
I hear you. Yeah.
That would disempower them.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and the suggestion to create the employee resource group or an interest group, or a representative body as such, and from volunteers from within the organisation. I love that idea, and I know that in Australia, where I am, there's a few within certain government departments, and I know that because it's more visible publicly and on social media, and I'm sure there's a ton more, but I just know from social media that I see them. And you were saying that when you get brought in, it's the group that brings you in, and sometimes you feel like you're preaching to the converted because majority of the audience will probably be from that group. So that then, getting to a question finally, is what is it that the group could do to actually get the buy-in, so that we've got the senior leadership actually walking into the room, role modeling exactly what you were talking about before?
I think the big thing that senior leaders need to understand, and there are a few companies got together some time ago and started a project which seems to have gone very quiet now, but the research shows quite clearly that inclusive organizations are more profitable than non-inclusive organizations. Simple as that. And there's no reason, there's no way you can say this, that, or this is what causes it. No, an inclusive organization gets better staff. They get staff that don't want to leave. So their turnover is actually much lower because people feel that they belong. And that's the benefit of inclusion, that sense of I belong, this is my place, this is my tribe. They don't get that, and they're losing all of that talent. And there's a lot more than we think. And we're seeing this now with Gen Z, where we've got this thought that 25% of Gen Z are now identifying as LGBTQ. It's not just trying that, it's just generally, and a lot more of them are saying, well, I'm non-binary, or I'm, and okay, they've got 150 labels they can pick one from. So I'm now trans, feminine, non-binary is the way I have to describe myself, because that fits with me. And I think it's what people are trying to do, is saying, well, look, labels don't really work. It's no good just saying, oh, it's trans, because there's such a variety of different people. who are like that. So we've got to get this understanding. So people do start to understand it. They can only come by training and education.
Yeah.
And that means that when you run lunch and learn sessions, there's an expectation that not that it's mandatory, but that everybody should attend. And it's almost got to get to the point where people think, if they notice that I'm not attending these, that's probably not going to do my career any good. So I'll go.
Yeah. Yeah. I love
And
that.
then
And sorry, go on.
yeah, and then they'll start to feel a little bit better about the whole thing. Once you've got open LGBTQ people within the department, within your team, it actually starts to change the dynamic, because people get used to dealing with it. And so, some LGBTQ people are just quiet. They just want to get on with their lives. You know, they're LGBTQ, they're in a relationship, and that's it.
Yeah.
Don't bring it to work. Others are a little more flamboyant. So when they arrive, they're going to be made up, and they're going to the boys. And,
But how's that different to anyone who wants to express themselves?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And our way we identify, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I see that the way we identify is only one bit of me. It's not all of me. Or, do you know, like, I'm trying to think of the labeling. A labeling helps people make sense of, but at the same time,
it's about social identity. This is part of what I do in my workshop, is in my keynotes, is to talk about social identity, because we've got all these different identities. The school we attended, that's part of our identity. The town we were brought up in. You're from Brisbane, so you're from Queensland, so that's a different culture to somebody who's from Sydney or from Melbourne or from Perth. I don't know whether you've got here. If you come from the Newcastle area in England, you're a Geordie. If you come from Liverpool, you're a Scouser. I was brought up in the West Country, so I get this slight West Country accent. The same like we're born on farm, It's and all of that, and the accent that we have, the flags we use, the icons, all of these things are part of our identity. I was a bit of a biker when I was younger. So the leather jackets and the the colourful pictures on the back, and then I became a hippie, so it was much more fun. At least
there
it's a
you
hippie.
go.
Nobody knew whether you're a boy or girl anyway. So
I love it. I love it. I think I just want to. I don't want to move past the point that you said, because the lesson there is for everyone. If the tool to attract senior leadership to be in the room, to have conversations, or to be present when a special interest group are trying to raise awareness, is a financial one, because we're happier employees, more productive employee by at least 12%. And so, that connection is very true. And you said a more inclusive organization is a more profitable organization. Well, then to me, for a middle manager, because even though I just asked about senior leadership because they're sort of even louder role model in the organization, but as a middle manager, if you just lead the way for you and your team, then you'll see that financial positive impact over time. And when the senior leaders are saying, what's going on? Why is it doing so well? He said, well, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing more inclusive activities, I'm role modeling this, and you can share all that and show the way without showing them what they haven't been doing, I guess. So
I think one of the things I've seen of successful employee resource groups is that they all have a senior leadership representative
like a champion
within their group. So one of the directors, one of the senior leaders is in the you've got them there all the time. If you've got somebody who's a Muslim, well, okay, can you be represented there? Somebody, one of your directors is gay, they become an obvious person to be the sort of senior leadership mentor. And And it means then that that information filters back up the organization. So
Good.
when those senior leaders go to a board meeting or go to a senior management meeting, they take with them the knowledge and understanding that they are hearing from the various different resource groups, which then feeds into the strategy of where the company's going. And that then makes the whole organization start to be an inclusive organization
Yeah.
right the way through.
So really active sponsorship there. So that's brilliant.
I think then you encourage allies, you encourage champions, and that's one of the things that can be done as a middle manager, is to encourage people to be allies. If somebody's new, just encourage people to buddy up with people, particularly if people from diverse groups that they don't know much about. Buddy up, learn about them, become a little bit more knowledgeable about that group, because we all need this knowledge. We all need to understand how do we market into this particular community? How do we attract employees from these different communities? Because they all work in different ways, and some things that we might normally do just don't work. Well, if we're dealing with, say, a migrant community that we're trying to recruit from.
No, I love that. Thank you. Yeah. So you're talking before about labels and pronouns, and we're using pronouns more intentionally now. So what are some of the tips to help people be more comfortable using preferred pronouns?
This has become a little bit of a flashpoint around this, isn't it? You can pretty much guarantee somebody, some politician somewhere, almost every day is going to make some comment about wokeism and public, wokeism gone mad, and I start hearing the Prime Minister of Britain saying we're definitely against a woke society. I'm thinking, they're just not getting it at all. Just because I choose to use they them pronouns, and I use they them pronouns for a very simple reason. I've spent 50 years of my life living as a man, even though I felt very uncomfortable about it. I got married, I had kids, and it was only at the age of 50 laws were changing. Suddenly, literally 1999, it became illegal to sack someone just because they were transgender. Up until that point, there was, you could be sacked just for telling someone. You didn't have to actually come out or do anything. Just letting somebody know, that was enough to get you sacked. And so I decided to change at that point, which was a difficult time because I've still had all that. Now I can't lose that 50 years. It's an awful lot of my life. I mean, that was 25 years of work experience, well, 30 years of work experience involved there. And yet I had to, all the pictures and videos, I had to literally start again, go to university and start from scratch. And my God, what I learned about the difference between men and women and the differences in gender. I had no idea the level of discrimination that was taking place against women on a daily basis. And I don't think most men have any idea either. Because I was I was obviously very positive towards women because of being trans, although secretly. But so when I changed gender, it was very clear that there wasn't any choice. Still isn't in this country. I think you can do non-binary in Australia now, can you?
Oh, I'd have to confirm, but I think so. I'd have to confirm that though.
Yeah, no, it's some. I mean, some parts of the United States can do it. Spain has allowed it. I think Thailand is allowing it. It's a bit limited. There's some restrictions. Everybody's a bit worried about, and the problem is if I've got a passport that says X as my gender, and I arrive in a country that doesn't recognize it, does that mean I'm now going to have a problem going in and out of the country because of
It's
So
definitely
there are a
appearing
whole,
on a lot of things here where you can choose to not identify or say non-binary, but whether it's actually,
yeah, it's whether you can whether you can change your legal documents to show
mm,
that. Because
yes,
I noticed very few forms online give the option to say it's Mr., Miss, Ms. MX isn't often on that list,
mm,
which is the non-binary
right,
version. So
okay.
it's quite a challenge. Excuse
Mm.
me, I'll just get a glass of water. I'm gonna, sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, one of the things that this sounds silly, but the, you know, apart from just when I meet someone and they identified as, he, him, and then have said to me later, I'm now them, they, I, if I've known them for a long time as one and then they change to the other, I, I have to do a lot of work in my head to make sure that I'm changing the pronoun in my head, and I don't want to be disrespectful if I slip up. But it's about saying, hang on, sorry, it's habit and I'm trying to break the habit. How do we maneuver something as small yet significant as those moments? They are significant moments, but they're those little moments where you do slip up. How do you maneuver that? Do you just own it and say, sorry, I'm still
Yeah,
changing and getting it right in my head?
it's just simple as that. Sorry,
Yeah.
correct it and move on.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Because otherwise you end up in a complex discussion, which isn't necessary. And
Right.
nobody wants. I don't want to get into a whole gender identity discussion every time somebody says the wrong pronoun.
Yeah.
I tend to ignore it now. Some people use he because they hear my voice.
Right.
Some people have known me only as Ricky, so they will use she. Um, most people struggle with they them, in my experience.
Okay.
Um,
Mm.
I've noticed some people are getting it and dealing with it and working with it. For a lot of people, it's I can't be bothered with this. Um,
Mm.
there's only two genders, and that's it. Bump one or the other,
Mm.
and we've still got that. I say to people, just think about it. The North American Indians believed that people who were trans or two spirits were born with the spirit of man and woman in one body, and that it was very rare. Not very many of them existed, which we know is the truth. And so they treated them with a bit of reverence, and they often became medicine men or medicine women, counselors, chiefs, some even chieftains. Many chiefs wanted a transgender partner as one of multiple partners. So it's going to take us a long time, because we have a world which is basically fixed around the whole idea of just one or just two genders.
Mm. Mm.
We've got people trying to push at the moment, and this is some of the stuff going on in the States. There's discussions happening here to say sex is biological sex. What you were born at your birth, that's it. You can't change it. That's uncomfortable, because we've gone through that battle. We've had that battle.
Mm.
We've actually accepted that some people need to change, because if they don't, they'd probably rather die.
Mm.
Um, it's going to take time, but I think it's a matter of just, as a manager, showing example. So I think as managers, we've got to try to be the person in the team that does it, that gets it right as much as possible, and sometimes we'll get it wrong.
Yeah.
And if we do, we just say, "Oh, sorry." I did some training at a care home once, and I'd been called in to do the training because one of the female care staff had changed gender to male, and nobody was getting it. I said, "Oh, we've known her all this time." I said, "No, him." "Oh, yeah." Well, when she came, no, he. And I
Mm.
couldn't, every time in the whole conversation, we don't often get it wrong, but she's the. No, I said, you just got it wrong again. Come on, you're not even thinking about it, and this is the problem. That the reason I've been called in was because people weren't accepting it, weren't using a new name, and eventually they left
Mm.
because they found it was undermining them. And then we've seen research that said literally 3 out of every 5 people purposely misgender trans people. So
What's that about?
in 2017, some research done, people said, no, I don't agree with this whole gender thing. It's all woke. It's all
So,
woke
so they
nonsense.
actively refuse to.
Absolutely refuse. Say no.
Oh,
They're born a man, always be a man. They're a bloke. That's it. I'm
right.
going to call them he.
Okay.
Um,
Wow. Yeah.
and
And any wonder people stay in the closet, don't disclose, don't choose to identify, and therefore are not showing up authentically, are not happy, are not productive. I mean, the link is so obvious, to anyway, I'm getting angry.
it's unfortunately, some quite loud mouths, some loud voices as well are in this anti-trans, anti non-binary group. But it will change.
Yeah.
As we shift slightly left, we start to find things become a little bit more comfortable. At the moment, we're generally in a fairly conservative governments everywhere at the moment.
Mm.
Far right governments in Italy and such like. Even Russia is a bit far right in its.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and look at the kind of anti-LGBT stuff there. They're almost encouraging people to
Mhm.
get LGBT people up in the streets. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of, loud mouths and violence and things like that, LGBTQ based discrimination and harassment happens, unfortunately. Can you provide some guidance on how middle managers and their colleagues and their team members can be more comfortable with challenging this?
um, I think that what we've been talking about today is really the whole answer. If middle managers are seen to be actively promoting and sponsoring EIG or type activities, are openly being seen to be inclusive, challenging people in conversations when people make comments, and sometimes the comments will just come from older staff who just have never met people who are gay or LGBTQ, and they'll say something and say no, that's not appropriate anymore. I'm just gently helping people.
Mm.
If it comes to it, if somebody is being antagonistic, and starts to get on their soapbox, I don't believe that people can change gender. I don't believe that God made man and woman, and this whole. Eventually, you're just going to say, look, that isn't the way we work here.
Mm.
You might be better to find somewhere that's more appropriate to your beliefs.
Mm.
Because I think it's like any organization, if you leave disruptive, negative people in a team, they will eventually start to infect the rest of the team.
Mm. And I think that comes
It's a
back to your policies.
tough thing we have to do, but occasionally you've got to say, this person doesn't fit in my team.
Yeah.
They're
Mm.
not the kind of person I want here.
Yeah. And it sounds like coming back to the policies that are in place in your organization and let them help you, guide you through that.
If you guide people through and do it very gently, and eventually you just say, look, this is the company policies, you're now in breach of them.
Mm.
This is a verbal warning.
Mm.
And you go into the procedures of just making it clear
Mm.
that, I've done this gently, but you're not you're not listening.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to publicly do it. It doesn't have to be done like public hangings. It's done nice and quietly and gently, and eventually, most people, if they feel that it doesn't fit, oh, this is all bloody gay and woke stuff, I'm not going to be here. Well, fine, go.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's not a public hanging. I like that. But I think your point is, yeah, we don't have to again make a big to do about it, and I think if managers, but I have to state that they have to state that this is not the policies, and this is not how we operate here. Then also tapping into the resources that are around you to say, how can I support you to adjust if you do want to stay here? These are the behaviors that we accept. This is a resource group you could get information from. It doesn't have to, I can introduce you to someone to talk about it, those sorts of things. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, if the organization has got counselling services within it, and some have, then that might be a route to start going down, to get people to try and understand where's all this prejudice coming from. Why is it there? Might be that they've been brought up in a very prejudicial family. Yeah, I've seen that quite often, where people just literally, they've never met anybody that's gay. They're terrified of people who are LGBTQ. They have some belief that if they walk into a gay bar, suddenly somebody's got to be trying to chat them up and have sex with them, and they think, and they're just not. It's this fear that somehow something's gonna happen to them. And I'll be honest, when I was a kid, I had that same fear.
Okay.
Because that was the kind of
Right.
Those are the kind of messages that were around in the 50s and 60s. That was how people treated anyone who was homosexual. It was even the word homo was a very negative, derogatory comment.
Yes. And that's that unconscious bias, isn't it? That's happening.
Yeah.
That's been filtered down through the generations. So
I think it's. People talk about unconscious bias, and I do a lot of training on that, but it's also hidden prejudice.
Hidden prejudice. Okay.
So what you've got is unconscious bias, where people are being discriminatory without realizing it. They're making comments that they don't think are offensive, and they're not really understanding it. But they're displaying some aspect of not being an inclusive person. And then you've got hidden prejudice, which is where people are. It's the same as the opposite to the gay person covering. This is somebody who's a fascist or right wing, negative attitude, and they're hiding that, suppressing that. But it keeps coming out. It'll come out in conversations. It will come out when they're out socializing. It'll come out when they, in bars, negative stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Stereotyping doesn't help as well. We've got this constant stereotypes about what gay people are. And I got caught with this once. I went to an interview on the radio, and somebody let me in. Name was Luke. It was summer, and he was wearing some nice shorts and a very, very pink thing, and waddled off. And I thought, okay, he's gay. Everything about him said camp as Christmas. And I made the comment. I said, because I was going to be talking about that, and I said, well, I said, you've obviously got Luke there. I was gay. And he said, no, he's not. I said, what? No, he's not. He's very camp, but he's actually married, and he's to a woman, and he just happens to be very camp, but he's straight. Thought,
yeah, there you go. We all get caught up.
Yeah, got caught out.
Yeah, welcome to being human, and we do make those mistakes, and I guess, like you say, you just correct it and move on. And I like how you said earlier, you don't make a fuss of it, just correct it and move on. This conversation is fascinating, and I appreciate it. And even that difference and distinction between unconscious bias and hidden prejudice is really important to be mindful of, because what of those two are we all carrying around that we should start thinking about, and using our employee assisted services to help us if we feel as though we've got a hidden prejudice, to help understand that, and so that we can walk through our workplaces with a different sort of attitude and a different mindset to everybody who we work with, and that's a more inclusive attitude. So really appreciate that. Thank you, Ricky. Look, we're just about out of time, but I really what I'd love to know is some of your favorite quotes, about being inclusive, something that would inspire our middle managers.
I've been thinking about this one because there aren't a huge. I actually like. I finish most of my talks with one thing, which is treat everyone with dignity and respect. And I use this as an intro to a quite long story about being attacked, my house being attacked by a bunch of kids, and because I was trans, and they were throwing stones, breaking windows, and all sorts of things. For about a month, the police were trying to help, but the kids just disappeared into the back streets and and alleys. So one day I just went out and confronted them. I had a metal pole in my hand. I was that frightened I was going to hit anybody who came, because they were, these were all 14, 15, 16-year-old teenagers who were and about up to 20 of them. So it's I was quite frightened.
Yes.
So I threw the pole down and I said, "No, okay, fine." And he said, "Well, you're going to hit me?" I said, "No, but you just chuck the mud down." And because he had a big pile of mud he was going to throw at my house. I said, "What are you doing this for?" And he said, "Well, are you a man or a woman?" I love that when moment people ask that question, I know we're okay. And before I knew what had happened, I had about 20 kids standing around me on the green outside my house and delivering a trans awareness workshop at 8:00 at night to a bunch of teenagers. And the problem went away.
Education.
So despite the fact of what they had done, I just put it aside, answered the questions, and that was when I realized that prejudice often and discrimination often comes from just lack of understanding.
Yeah.
But we have to treat everyone, and there's no point in saying, well, but not the murderers and the rapists and the pedophiles. No. If we don't treat them with dignity and respect, that's probably why they are the way that they, or that may be why they are the way they are, because they've not been treated with dignity and respect, and so they have no dignity and respect to give back, because they're not. We treat people, doesn't mean we don't punish them. What we do is we treat people with dignity and respect, and we deal with them in an adult way. And the other quote, and that's my quote. Well, actually, it's not. It's the underlying principle of the Human Rights Charter, but I love it, and I just make the emphasis that it's got to be everyone, because you can't make a decision. Otherwise, you become judge and jury. Who deserves to be treated with dignity and respect? Not him. She's okay.
Yeah.
But this I love, because this is quite funny. Vernon Myers quote: "Diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance."
Oh, say that again.
Okay, diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance.
That's really cool. That's really cool. I love that quote. And I love, as well as treat everyone with dignity and respect. And to your point, who made you judge and jury?
Yeah.
Oh, Ricky.
You sent me a note about quotes for leadership as well, which I thought about.
Yeah, what have you got for us?
I'm going to give you one, which again, I don't know where this came from. I don't know whether it was one of these ones that I invented myself or whether it came out of, anyway. A man tends to lead from the top of an organization. A woman tends to lead from the center of it.
Okay, sorry, that just puts me in a very awkward position to go damn straight, because I identify as she, her, so I'm taking it.
I think women, very often, women are networkers.
Yeah.
Men run command and control systems with a network of people below them that enforce everything, and they're at the top of it. Women position themselves at the center of an organization, networked, and they know everyone and their families and their kids and who's doing what and who's not doing what. Men haven't got a clue. They don't even know if their staff are married.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but an awful lot of them. Because you did ask me about my best boss, and his name was Eric Foddering, and he probably was the man who put me on track to being the person I am today in terms of, you know, my attitudes to life. And what was it he did? And he trusted me to do the job. And that meant he allowed me to make mistakes. And then helped me to learn from them. So never sort of admonished me for making a mistake. You made a mistake. Okay, fine. How are you going to fix it?
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it? And I think, I'll just give you one little story of this, of the way in which I think we can learn leadership much more effectively. It was appraisals, and we all hate appraisals, don't we? Annual appraisal, and we go, and this is the chance for the boss to tell you, you know, how you've been doing, and you're supposed to be able to tell the boss what you think as well, but you don't. So anyway, I went in for my appraisal, and I have to admit, I am not the tidiest person in the world. I do have a horrible tendency to have piles and piles of paper on top of paper on top of paper, and it just, yeah, it gets it. Back in my early days in the office, it got out of control, and it was starting. I also get distracted and deflected on from one thing onto the next. So probably if it had been available as a condition, then I would have probably been diagnosed as maybe ADHD or somewhere close to that. But I wasn't available because we hadn't figured that one out as actually a problem. It was just untidy. So he got me into the office one day and he said, what have you done this month? I said, what? He said, what have you actually done this month? And I said, oh, I've done that. Okay, how long did that take? Put the time there, and what else? And he just went through and got me to list everything I'd done and how long it took. He says, is that it? Is there anything else? I'm searching, racking my brains. We've been half an hour working through this list. What have you done? What have you achieved? What has it? Okay. And he just drew a line. He said, absolutely certain. There's nothing else at all. No, I said, that's it. And he started up. He said, so that's 20 hours. What did you do with the rest of the time?
Wow.
I just sat there. And it was so clear that I'd been distracted, moving from one thing to another, getting caught up on phone calls, people going, and my time was just being literally whittled away by other people.
Yeah.
I didn't see it. He saw it. He did that exercise, went through it, said, right. So what do you think you could do to improve the amount of productive time? And I put a plan together with him, and so he never did anything more than ask questions.
Oh, that's gold.
And I came out of that thing feeling I had just been beaten up, sitting down thinking, God, I'm going to fix it. And he hadn't said a word.
Yeah,
I'd
bless.
done all the beating up. I'd done all the analysis of what was wrong, and I'd put forward all the solutions myself. All he did was ask questions. He was an absolutely brilliant boss.
So from that experience, did you feel like you owned the plan that you created?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
I
Genius.
had to fix it. It was my problem. I had to fix it.
Yeah, how good is that? Except that you felt beat up, but everything else around it. So that's so good.
It's just like, there are problems going on and we just don't look at them. And he just made me look at it.
Yeah, isn't that good?
I remember I was doing one project with him once, and I was so passionate about what I was trying to do. And I lost it. Shouted, slammed out my way out of his office, went and sat down. I thought, oh God, what have I done? About an hour later, he came down and said, "Cool down now. Let's get back to it."
Oh, I love that. That calm that everyone else needs when there's a storm going on. I love Ricky. I think you and I could chat for hours, but unfortunately, our time is done. At least this time. I just so appreciate you for sharing your experience and your stories and your insights about how we can be far more LGBTQ inclusive. So, on behalf of all the people on the muster, I want to say thank you so much, and thank you for being an expert on this year's muster.
My pleasure.